Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to my spiritual YouTube channel. My name is Kieran and I help people using a spiritual perspective. I am here today to talk about 7 things that spiritual people are doing wrong, including myself. Right? These are things that I've compiled that I have noticed in a spiritual community, amongst people. Just things that they've sort of mistakes that they've been doing wrong that's hurting themselves in the long term. In the short term, these things can actually feel quite good, but I've done probably almost all of these things, so that's why I include myself in it. And sometimes I still kind of fall back into old patterns, which isn't very helpful or healthy. And I don't want to present myself as perfect or anything like that, right? So these are just things that I genuinely feel are hurting people and probably will continue to hurt people in the future. So this is just a list. It's a good thing to have in case you ever forget. It's a good thing to remember. So that you don't fall back into old sort of beliefs or doing things that just don't work anymore, okay? So let's just get started. The first thing that I have here is blind optimism, okay? So this is essentially people ignore reality in favor of blind optimism, okay? So this is pretty prevalent in specifically New Age sort of communities, really especially because of the law of attraction. So the law of attraction essentially states, just to give a quick summary of its mostly nonsensical BS, is that like attracts like. So you have positive thoughts and you attract positive things into your reality. Just too bad those goddamn Rwandans couldn't quite get that right during the genocide, or any number of people in the world that are suffering. Just if only we could all just think positively, right? Well, unfortunately, we've let this idea that the more positive we are, the better our life will become, which is actually just not true. It's actually really harmful to believe that. Case in point, it ignores the blatant disparity amongst human beings that I've already talked about. We talked about genocides, wars, famines. You can take a look at the war in the Ukraine. Are we just going to say that everybody in the Ukraine wasn't positive enough and that's why they, allowed a whole country to invade them, right? Sometimes shit happens in life, okay? And the point is that if you're going to favor optimism over everything, you're going to, at some point, cross over a line where you're now ignoring reality, right? And so what happens is that if you're not partaking in the reality of your circumstances in favor of blind optimism, you're not able to change anything. You're not able to do much. You're not able to shift and look at what's really going on, what patterns or behaviors are actually inherently negative or certainly need some examining and some maybe realignment of some kind. So just sort of going on and on and on, hoping and just thinking that everything will work out for the best, when a lot of the times it's not going to do that. So just behaving like that is actually really harmful in the long run. In the short term, things like the law of attraction and ideas like that give you this boost of confidence, because it's essentially saying, hey, as long as you have faith and you believe in yourself, and you just think positively, then everything will work out just fine. But oftentimes that does not happen, and even when you have action to back up some of those positive ideas and things, if you don't take the time to realize that maybe what you're doing isn't making you happy, ergo the actions you're taking aren't in alignment with what you really want out of your life, then you're just going to end up sort of in a stalemate with your own life. Okay, so ignoring reality is not a good thing, right? And of course that idea gets attacked quite a bit because it seems like I'm just a negative guy, who just wants to bring people down, bring down their vibes, man. But I'm not really like that. I don't want people to suffer in the long term. So if I have to be kind of like a downer at the beginning, that's okay, because I've gone through this stuff. And it really ruined my life, this idea of just having blind optimism and things, okay? It really ruined a large portion of my spiritual journey, okay? So I don't want people to go through that same thing, okay? So number 2, and this sort of goes in line with number 1, is abandoning science and reason in favor of woo. You probably heard that word before, woo, not the sound that you make on a roller coaster or while having sex. Don't confuse that. It's sort of a label of sort of out there ideas, right? So let's share an idea with you guys. Let's share a story. This is story time. I had a friend once who was going to remain unnamed, in case they ever watch this, but they probably won't. And she one time got bit by a spider, a black widow, not just a regular house spider, though I don't think that's actually a thing, a house spider. But it was just a spider, and it was a black widow. And so, as you probably know, they are venomous. Yes, I think it's venomous. They are venomous, right? Not poisonous, venomous. And they cause quite a bit of pain if you get bitten by a black widow. Okay, so there's swelling involved. There's swelling around the bite, particularly nausea, chills. You can vomit, fatigue, your bones, muscles start to ache. Okay, it's just a general unpleasant experience. It's not the end of the world technically, but it is not. It's not pleasant. So this person in particular, because supposedly they read some spiritual articles on how the pharmaceutical industry is evil, which it certainly isn't a good one, but they read some articles, they're in favor of spirituality, and they've got themselves chocked up full of like holistic medicines and all sorts of stuff. So she didn't want to take any medicine. She didn't want to take an Advil or Tylenol, whatever. She didn't want to go to a doctor, nothing. She just thought that she would use affirmations and prayer and just hold out as long as she could, because to take medicine would be essentially giving in to a non-spiritual way of doing things, right? To take an Advil or take pain medication would be essentially saying, I don't have enough faith in the universe. I can't do this I'm not spiritual enough. This is just like a test, whatever kind of rationale she was using. So she was using everything but modern medicine to essentially take care of the issue, until it got so bad that eventually she broke down, took the Tylenol, started to feel better, it started actually taking care of herself through medicine itself, and then she even had the audacity, the gall, to give her affirmations credit rather than the actual medicine she had taken. So an hour, a couple hours later, when she was feeling better, it was the affirmations that had worked, and not actually the medicine. So you can see this sort of, again, blind optimism, sort of ignoring reality, but in a deeper way, the focus here on the science is that when you ignore the basic thing that has allowed the human species to exist this far, that's science, by the way, just letting you guys know. If you're going to ignore all of that in favor of just out there ideas, what's going to happen is you're going to die. You're going to hurt yourself, or you're going to maim yourself, or you're not going to take care of yourself, okay? There are certainly a lot of negatives about modern healthcare system. You can look at the American one in particular, without having like a universal healthcare. You can look at pharmaceutical and insurance companies as essentially just being really, really greedy, because they are, right? I mean, you can even take pretty severe things like cancer, and you realize that they make people billions of dollars a year. So you can think about things like, well, the fact that cancer has been around so long, is it really that difficult to come up with a cure? Because polio they were able to cure, other things they were able to cure. How come cancer? How come this is such a divisive thing? We can't conquer that. Is it because it makes so much money, right? And I'm not making a claim or anything like that, but these are interesting things to think about, absolutely. But if you have cancer and you are going to ignore all treatment in favor of affirmations and just believing that you can will the cancer out of your body, I don't care how many anecdotal evidence you've seen about that. The real evidence suggests that plenty of people die because of that. And it's no different than what religious people have done throughout the ages, still do. You can take Jehovah's Witnesses as an example. One of the things that they don't like is blood transfusions. They don't get behind that whole idea, okay? And so simple procedures that could save people's lives, they do not partake in, which means those people often die, the people that are in need of that treatment, just because of their religious beliefs. And it's no different in spirituality. We've just changed the labels, the terms, the scenarios, the circumstances, etc. But often it's just the same shit happening with just different times, different kinds of people, different kinds of folks, different kinds of opinions. Same things happening. So you don't want to do that sort of thing. Luckily, I've never done that too much, but I have, gone into a lot of Eastern or non-traditional medicine in order to try and help myself of really what was just a basic need of maybe a doctor who gave a shit a little bit more than the ones I had known previously, okay? So, if the medical world isn't living up to its hype, that's probably fair. It's fair to notice that. But it doesn't mean that you're going to abandon science and reason just in favor of everything. And this is true of opinions and beliefs and spiritual ideas, right? A huge idea, spiritual community is parallel universes, parallel realities. It's very popular among like Marvel movies and superhero movies and stuff. But ultimately, outside of film, there's not a lot of science to back that up. And keep in mind that within the scientific community, people disagree on things all the time, just as they do in the historical community, right? So it's important to know that an opinion, even if it is spiritual, isn't any more proof than anything, other. So it's important to not abandon just being grounded in reality in favor of just far out ideas that may or may not be true and often have no real basis in science. Okay, so let's just keep that as that, keep ourselves grounded, and we'll move on to point number 3. Okay, so number 3 is not expressing anger or negativity. And this one's really especially harmful because you think as a spiritual person you can't say or do anything that even remotely involves the expression of anger. You can't say fuck, you can't, you can't just get mad, you can't get angry, you can't, how are you supposed to express this shit if you're not allowed to, right? So it's, again, just like religion throughout the ages, let's all be pious and holy and calm and peaceful. And if you're not those things and the devil's inside of your head doing really weird shit, probably playing bocce ball, I don't know what the devil does, probably would play some bullshit sport. But the idea is that this horribleness of anger needs to be repressed and taken away, and any negativity needs to be pushed down, suppressed, dealt with, prayed out of existence, affirmed out of existence. Again, change the labels, same idea. And what happens? Well, we're left unfulfilled. Basically, we're left with residuals because we haven't actually expressed it. And there's nothing wrong with expressing your anger or your negativity, because these are part of your existence. They're part of the human experience. They're part of life. You shouldn't push them aside. They can bring you into more positivity or more joy, and there's going to be times in your life where your negativity is completely valid. You've probably heard the saying, it's okay not to be okay. This is true. It's okay not to be okay. It's okay not to be positive all the time. It doesn't make you less spiritual just because your friend, so-and-so happens to be absolutely, so high vibe all the time and just seem to be in this state of bliss and enjoyment, and you look at yourself and you go, well, I'm not like that. I must be failing. Well, don't let social media or things like that confuse you. Most of the time, people are just putting up an act, okay? The reality is, for the majority of people on Earth, anger and negativity is going to be a real part of our human experience, and we're not supposed to just indulge in that, of course. That's not what I'm saying. Let's not make straw man arguments of everything, but we shouldn't have to suppress or think of these emotions as these uncomfortable feelings as less spiritual, because they are part of who we are, and who we are is a spiritual being. So therefore, everything must be included within that, and it's only our job to bring awareness to it, not to demonize or judge it. Okay? So anyway, number 4 is developing a spiritual ego in favor of a regular one. So what does a regular ego say? Well, a regular ego, let's just put it into some broad terms here, is just the conditioning, the opinions, and the beliefs, just this need to be right. And I know it's not a clinical definition of ego, but it's that little voice in your head that tells you things and blah blah blah. Right? It's like little bird chatter, right? And slightly different than your thoughts, but it's an identity, right? If your thoughts are the bird chatter, the ego is I am an eagle. So it tells you, I am this type of thing. And so you've built an identity around that. And the thoughts, whether they're negative or positive or however you want to look at it, are just chatter or the noises that would come from that. But in any case, the ego is an identity. So you've built it over time. Okay, often kind of unconsciously, but it's been built over time, willingly or unwillingly. And the spiritual ego is just adapting that. It's just coming to a conclusion of its own accord, saying, well, I'm not this human anymore. I'm not this person. I'm this enlightened being, and I have these ideas and these opinions now. And so what happens is that we often judge others for doing spirituality differently. And so we gatekeep spiritual processes to other people. Okay, I've definitely done this before in my past, because probably my biggest failing as a human, and I'm more than happy to admit this to you, is that I have a bit of arrogance about me, okay? I've probably many reasons for that, of course. I was an only child. My parents are incredibly arrogant, specifically my father. Lots of anger, Irish anger going on there. And also just because I consider myself an intelligent individual. And of course, already saying that makes me seem like an arrogant asshole, doesn't it? Just saying I'm smart. But this idea is that I pride myself on my intelligence or my ability to learn or gather information. I've always had this philosophical nature about my mind. Okay, even before I was sort of spiritual. So I've always liked gathering information. I've always liked the learning. What happens, though, is if you combine that with any element of insecurity, you end up with arrogance, okay? So I'm not afraid to say that throughout my life I've had great deals of insecurity, which have resulted in great deals of arrogance. Now, thankfully, I'm able to, at this point in my life, recognize it very quickly if it's happening, and oftentimes not go as far as I used to. So will I say that I'm 100% not arrogant? No, not anymore, but I wouldn't say something like that, but that's part of releasing that whole idea, right? Just to recognize the imperfection of the human. And what people do is they just take on this whole identity, this spiritual person now, and it's just replacing the regular human ego with a spiritual one. So now instead of just being an eagle, this sort of cool bird, thinking of yourself in such a way that's sort of high, now you're thinking about it in the same way, but now you're not an eagle, you're a spiritual eagle, you're a spiritual bird, you're this better version, you're even better than an eagle. God, what's better than an eagle? So it's a symbol of American freedom. What is better than an eagle? Of all the cool birds out there, what's better than a bald eagle? Not much, right? So you just make it even better, you make it even cooler, and you get into yourself a position where you're basically just better than everybody, but just now in a different way. And you're assholes to people in different ways, not traditionally. It's not that you don't hold doors open for people or say please or thank you. It's just that you gatekeep. You judge others for having different beliefs or opinions, and you essentially try to dictate what is spiritual and what isn't. And that's very, very harmful to yourself, of course, because you alienate yourself. You isolate yourself in the process because everybody's low vibe. And so you can't talk to these people. You can't mess around with them. But what happens is that at some point you realize that actually almost everybody is low vibe by that definition, because we all have bad days. So in any case, let's move on to number 5 here. Trying to make enlightenment an end goal. This is pretty big. So our mind works in such a way that when we have a goal, the mind puts it far away from us immediately. So here we are existing, and our little brain says, yeah, I would really like to do something different. I'd like to be healed. I don't know why it's talking like Mickey Mouse, but it is. And so, okay, and then we say, well, I'm not healed now, because if I want to be healed, that means that it's over there. So you start here, here's the healed, and now we got to walk towards it. Often it's crawling, though, isn't it? It feels like it. And what happens, actually, is that it seems to get farther and farther away. And why is that? Because the whole time we're getting towards it, the destination is changing as well. Because if we're here, I need to be healed, and this is it, we're still saying I need to be healed here. So the distance is only going to keep on going, because it's like, what does being healed look like? Everybody has different ideas of that. So and because we're constantly changing, this goal is going to constantly change. Anytime we even add a new definition to what it means to be healed, it immediately goes over here. If we start at thinking healed just means having no negative emotions, then it stays like this, and we try to work towards that, which is an impossible goal. And then we realize that, well, that's impossible, so I need to have negative emotions at some point. I just need to learn how to deal with them. So healed becomes different, right? So the same thing happens with any version of ourselves we want to be. Our mind often just puts it in the future, and we're not really capable of essentially just accepting ourselves as we are now, right? Everybody has different processes of healing or getting to a place, and all those enlightened masters, I don't think they ever tried to turn enlightenment into a goal. They didn't try to become enlightened. They just did things in their own way. They just relied on their own experiences. And so the same is probably true for us. Is the world can't be full of enlightened monks. We can't all just be Buddhist monks living up in the mountains. A lot of us have to live in reality. We have to be teachers and and gardeners and DoorDash drivers and artists and musicians and work at 9-to-5 jobs and go through transformations and go on vacations and help people or not help people. Everybody has to do things, so we can't all just escape from reality and live our whole life in thought and prayer, okay? Because of course your life is going to be very peaceful if you do that, but for the majority of us we can't do that. So we have to find a way to essentially stop making enlightenment into this end goal, because it was never going to be a destination. It was never going to be this thing that we were going to reach, because it's always going to change. Our definitions of it are always going to change. The parameters, the things that happen in life are always going to change. The moment that you try to become something else, you're no longer what you are now. And enlightenment is just probably the simple process of being with who you are now and not having a problem with that. So in any case, let's move on to number 6. And I apologize if it's distracting that I look away from the camera, but I couldn't remember all these off the top of my head. So 6, doing spiritual things just for the sake of doing them. This is huge. I've done this so many times. Really useless, actually. So let's give you a running list of all of the things that I have done in my spiritual journey to be more spiritual, right? I've got the combo, bufo, float tanks, meditation, yoga, different diets, affirmations, law of attraction, different beliefs, star seeds, light workers, okay, backpacking through Europe or whatever, traveling, going here, moving there, chasing after this dream, etc., going to massages, chiropractor, okay, so on and so on, right? And we do all this stuff. We go to Burning Man or something, and it's supposed to take us to a place where we feel like, oh, we're finally spiritual. We finally get it. Yes, I did it. I'm spiritual. I am the guru. But now, you realize, oh no, I actually feel just the same. I'm shitty and everything sucks still. The highs wear off pretty quickly. This is just because we're doing things for the sake of doing them. Appearing spiritual for the sake of just appearing spiritual, because we think that we need to do this, because your friend, the yoga instructor, Tammy, decided that, she's going to go vegan, do some vegan 30-day challenge thing, and everybody seems to love Tammy with her big breasts, and so, well, maybe I should be like Tammy and I should do my vegan thing, and then you realize, well, I actually don't want to do that. I kind of like eating meat from time to time. There's nothing unspiritual about eating meat. It's just meat. It's animals, sure. It may not be the nicest thing that's ever occurred on the planet, but as a species, we're not there yet to the point where animals are just off the menu entirely, okay? So it's not unspiritual to eat meat. It's not unspiritual to curse. It's not unspiritual to have sex before marriage. These are all just different ideas that are sort of borrowed throughout time with different moral quandaries and different parameters and things that we add and change the names and stuff, but essentially, it's not unspiritual to do things in your own way. If you feel like veganism is for you, then you should do that. If you feel like being a vegetarian is for you, you should do that too. If you just feel like maybe I don't want to eat that much meat anymore because my body feels better when I just have a little bit of protein, not an Arby's sandwich every day, then you should do that too. You should take care of your health in the way that you know how. And there's going to be a lot of overlap, right? Meditation. I like meditation and yoga. I think they're very helpful things to the everyday person. But do you have to do yoga in a specific way, meditation in a specific way? There's room to sort of play, to dance within these ideas and these spiritual practices, right? So you're not unspiritual if you have your own way of doing things, okay? So last point is relying on external sources for basic guidance for just how to live your life, okay? So there are lots of helpful things, guys, lots of them. Tarot readings, they can be very helpful, certainly. Especially if you're in a bit of a pickle, as they say. I wouldn't say that, but some people apparently say a bit of a pickle. Whoever they are, I don't know. But when we get into situations or dilemmas, tarot can be helpful. Psychics can be helpful. Reading a book by Eckhart Tolle can be helpful. Reading about the law of attraction can be helpful. There's always truth in something. Looking in Reddit for all these different people's spiritual ideas and opinions can be helpful. Talking to other people about ideas and spirituality can be helpful. You're growing, right? Anything and everything can be helpful. The problem is essentially what happens when it's not helpful anymore. And there always does come that time where essentially nothing works. You've read the books, you've watched the videos, You've tried the different shit, and nothing's working. So at that point, we need to realize that our own internal mechanism, our own intuition, our own guidance exists, and that it was never supposed to be escaped from. Okay, so relying on these other things are other people using, that part of their ability to help others, but what about our own ability to help ourselves? Because that's where we're going to get that deepest truth, right? Truth is supposed to feel like a remembrance. Okay, so if I say something to you, if you're watching this video, and the things that I'm saying are coming across like, oh yeah, what he's saying, that makes sense because I remember that. It feels like I already knew that. I just needed a reminder. That's what truth feels like, by the way. Anything else that doesn't feel like that, it doesn't necessarily mean it's false. It's just sort of take it with a grain of salt or understand where it's coming from, not try to make it your own, right? The same thing with what I'm saying. If you feel like, I don't know if what he's saying is necessarily true, that's cool, that's great. Don't take what I'm saying as gospel. I'm just a regular guy. So, again, rely on your own intuition, your own sense of worth, your own sense of understanding of the world, rather than relying on everybody else's opinions or understandings of spirituality to guide you through. Because ultimately you're going to end up feeling very burnt out by continuing to do things in that way, because it's just a hard thing to keep up expectations of such a way of living, right? Eventually we're going to have to rely on ourselves to get us through our own situations, because that means that we can come out the other end empowered. And you cannot be empowered without going through something on your own. That's just the way that it is. Okay? So, no shortcuts in life, essentially. Alright guys, that's the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know if you did or didn't. And just as a quick reminder, guys, I'm writing on medium.com. You guys know that website? I'm just going to share that I started writing on there. If you guys wanted to follow that, that would be kind of cool. If not, then I guess I can't blame you. I don't know. But just thought I'd mention it, guys. Okay, talk soon. Bye-bye.